My name is Michael Turner. For 20 years, I worked two jobs, construction by day, night shifts at a factory, just to build the life my family now enjoys. I paid the mortgage, I fixed every broken pipe. I put food on the table when no one else could. And yet, last Thanksgiving in Denver, they told me not to come. Imagine standing outside the very house you built, watching through frosted glass as the people you love laugh without you. The smell of turkey, the glow of the fire, the sound of your daughter's voice, and you alone on the porch holding a bottle you didn't even want to drink. That night, my brother-in-law's brand new SUV sat in the driveway. He bragged it was his hard work, but I knew better. I had paid the down payment money they said they'd return. They never did. And then I heard it, my sister-in-law's voice. Thanksgiving feels so much more peaceful without him. The words cut deeper than any knife. I didn't shout, I didn't knock, I didn't beg. I just stood there in the cold, my breath turning to smoke, and I made a promise this silence would be my weapon. You see, I've kept every receipt, every bill, every contract. They thought I was a fool for saving them, but those papers were not clutter. They were ammunition. If you've ever been betrayed by the very people you bled for, stay with me, because this story isn't just about loss. It's about justice. Cold, deliberate, undeniable justice. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be told, subscribe now, because the truth is only beginning. My name is Michael Turner. For as long as I can remember, I carried the weight of everyone else's dreams on my back. I was 28 when I bought that house in Denver, Colorado. A modest 2-story, nothing fancy. But it was safe. It was warm, and it was mine, or at least I thought it was. I worked every hour I could, pouring concrete by day, running late-night shifts in a warehouse after. My hands bled, my back broke, but I told myself it was worth it, because that house wasn't just wood and stone. It was a promise. A promise to my family that no matter how hard things got, they would always have a home. I fixed every leaky pipe, patched every broken wall, paid every overdue bill. When the furnace died one winter, I sold my truck just to replace it. And when my daughter wanted to go to college, I picked up a second job so she wouldn't have to take a loan. I believed that sacrifice was love. I believed silence was strength. And for years, I thought they saw me as the man who held everything together. But the truth is they saw me as disposable. Someone to pay the bills, carry the load, then disappear when it was convenient. Looking back now, I realize I wasn't building a family. I was building a life they could steal the moment I let my guard down. It was Thanksgiving night in Denver. Snow drifted across the streetlights, quiet and slow. I stood outside the house I bought, hand stiff in the cold breath, fogging the glass, while inside warmth spilled across every window. I could see them. My daughter laughing with her cousins. My ex-wife pouring wine into glasses that I paid for. My brother-in-law carving the turkey at a table I built with my own hands. The smell of roasted meat and sweet potatoes reached me even from the porch. For a moment, I thought about knocking. For a moment, I thought about forcing the door open and demanding my seat back. But then, I heard her, my sister-in-law's voice sharp as ice. Thanksgiving feels so much more peaceful without him. The laughter that followed cut me deeper than any blade. They didn't just forget me, they erased me. I gripped the bottle in my hand, cheap whiskey, not because I wanted to drink, but because it gave me something to hold on to, something heavier than the emptiness in my chest. My brother-in-law's brand new SUV sat in the driveway, polished and gleaming. He bragged it was his reward for hard work, but I knew the truth. The down payment came from me, from hours I'll never get back. I didn't knock. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just turned away. And in that silence, something inside me shifted. That night on a snowy street in Denver, I stopped being the man they could discard. I became the man who would take everything back. I walked away from that porch in Denver snow, crunching under my boots. Every step pulled me deeper into memories, reminders of everything I gave and everything they stole. I remembered the winter of 2008. The furnace broke. The house froze. My daughter shivered under blankets too thin to fight the cold. I sold my truck, the only thing I owned, outright to buy a new one. They called it responsibility, but the truth, it was sacrifice. Then came 2012. My ex-wife wanted to remodel the kitchen. She said it would make the house feel more like a home. I drained my savings, maxed out 2 credit cards. The cabinets gleamed. The countertops sparkled. She smiled, kissed me, and said I was a good man. That smile cost me 10 years of debt. And in 2016, my daughter got into college. Tuition was more than I made in 6 months. I worked nights unloading freight, slept in the cab of borrowed trucks. I told her she wouldn't owe a cent. She hugged me once, whispered, "Thank you, Dad." That moment carried me through the exhaustion. But now, as I replayed each sacrifice, one truth grew louder. They never remembered the cost. They never remembered me. And standing in that snow with their laughter echoing behind closed doors, I realized something brutal. I wasn't family. I was a wallet with a heartbeat. That night, something hardened in me. And for the first time, I didn't feel tired. I felt dangerous. The snow kept falling in Denver, soft and silent, but the silence around me burned louder than any storm. That's when I saw it, my brother-in-law's brand new SUV, parked in the driveway like a trophy. Black paint shining under the porch light, chrome wheels glinting like teeth. He bragged about it for weeks. Said it was his reward for hard work. Hard work, no. I knew the truth. The down payment came from me. From the overtime hours I spent unloading freight at midnight. From the weeks I skipped meals so my daughter could eat better. From every aching muscle in my back that never healed. I remembered the day he asked me for help. He said, "Just a loan, Mike. I'll pay you back in 3 months." He smiled, shook my hand like a brother. 3 months turned into a year. A year turned into silence. And now the proof of his betrayal sat gleaming on 4 wheels. I stood there staring at it, feeling the weight of every lie. My hands clenched so tight my knuckles ached. And in that moment, I understood something cruel. They didn't just take my money. They took my dignity. They dressed themselves in my sacrifice and called it their success. Through the window, laughter rose again, glasses clinking, my daughter's voice blending with theirs. But the sound didn't warm me anymore. It lit a fire inside me. That SUV wasn't just a car. It was proof. Proof that I wasn't family to them. I was a resource. And soon they learned the cost of using me. I couldn't shake the image of that SUV. But what haunted me more wasn't the car, it was the house behind it. The house I bought, the house I bled for. Years ago, my mother-in-law looked me straight in the eye and said, "Michael, this home will always be yours. You built it. It's part of you." I believed her. Those words carried me through the nights I worked double shifts, the days I came home too tired to eat. But weeks before that Thanksgiving, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from the county clerk's office. I thought it was a routine notice, maybe property taxes. Instead, it was a quiet execution. My name was gone. The deed had been transferred. The house I paid for now belonged to them on paper at least. I remember holding that letter in my hands, the ink smudging as my palms sweated. I read it once, twice, a dozen times. Each time the words cut deeper. Owner Lisa Turner. My ex-wife. Not me. I sat at my kitchen table that night, staring at the walls. I patched the windows. I replaced the floorboards I laid with my own hands. And all I could think was, how do you erase a man like that? The answer was simple, you don't. You just steal from him. And as the snow fell heavier outside, one truth hardened inside me. If they thought a piece of paper could erase me, they were about to learn how wrong they were. When I first read that deed, my instinct was to storm into their house, slam the paper on the table, and demand an answer. I wanted to shout, to rage, to make them feel even a fraction of the humiliation I felt. But I didn't. I folded the letter. I put it back in the envelope, and I stayed silent. In Denver, silence can be brutal. The snow falls heavy, muffling every sound. That night, my silence matched the storm outside. And for the first time, silence didn't feel weak. It felt sharp, dangerous, alive. I realized something standing in that cold. If I shouted, they dismissed me as bitter. If I fought, they called me violent. But if I stayed quiet, they wouldn't see me coming. So I played along. At family gatherings, I smiled just enough. At work, I punched the clock like nothing was wrong. And at night, I sat at my kitchen table, organizing every receipt, every loan agreement, every proof of what I'd given and what they had stolen. Each document became a weapon, each memory a piece of evidence. They thought I was gone, erased from the house, erased from their story. But the truth was simpler. I was just waiting. And in my silence, I wasn't broken. I was building. Silence gave me time. And I used every second. In my small apartment on the edge of Denver, I cleared the kitchen table and laid out my life like a battlefield. Faded receipts, old contracts, bank statements with my signature, loan agreements written in my careful handwriting. Every piece of paper they mocked me for keeping. I stacked them one by one, turning ridicule into ammunition. I started with the mortgage records. Every payment was mine. I traced the checks, the dates, the hours of overtime that funded them. Then I pulled out utility bills, water, gas, electric, all under my name, for more than a decade. When the pipes burst in 2010, I had the repair bill. When the roof caved after the storm in 2013, I had the contractor's receipt. They laughed once, called me obsessive for filing everything away. But as the pile grew higher, I realized they weren't just papers. They were proof. Proof that the house wasn't theirs, it was mine. Some nights I stayed up until dawn, the snow outside muffling the world, while I worked in silence. My fingers trembled as I highlighted dates, circled numbers, built timelines. Each line drawn was another nail in their coffin. And with every document I placed in order, I felt less like a victim and more like a surgeon. Cold, precise, unstoppable. They thought silence meant surrender. But in that silence, I was building a case sharp enough to cut them open. The deeper I dug, the darker it got. One night, while sorting through old bank records, I noticed a loan statement I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine. The account number was tied to the house, but the signature wasn't mine. I drove to the county records office in Denver the next morning. The clerk pulled the file, slid it across the counter, and there it was staring me in the face, a second mortgage. My ex-wife and her brother had signed for it 3 years ago. They'd used the house I paid for, as collateral. The money gone. Funneled into some half-baked investment scheme her brother cooked up. Real estate flips, quick cash promises a business that collapsed within a year. They lost it all. And yet no one told me. Not one word. I stood in that office, hands shaking, heat rising up my neck. It wasn't just theft anymore. It was betrayal carved into legal ink. They gambled with my blood, my years, my sacrifices. On the drive home, I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Every mile, the rage grew heavier. They hadn't just stolen my name from the deed. They had buried me under debts I never agreed to. By the time I parked outside my apartment, I wasn't thinking like a victim anymore. I was thinking like an executioner. They believed the silence meant I was finished. But I had just uncovered the weapon that would finish them. I had enough evidence to bury them. For weeks, I organized every document into neat binders, mortgage payments, utility bills, loan statements, even photos of me repairing the roof and digging trenches in the yard. Every piece of paper was a nail, and together they built a coffin. The morning after I uncovered the second mortgage, I walked into the courthouse in Denver. My boots echoed against the marble floor, steady and cold. People shuffled past me, chasing divorces, custody battles, small claims. But I wasn't there for scraps. I was there for justice. I slid the file across the lawyer's desk. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows rising higher with every sheet. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "Mr. Turner, this isn't just a case. This is a takedown." Within days, the motion was filed. A judge reviewed the evidence, stamped it with finality. And just like that, the wheels began to turn. An order went out. Every shared asset was frozen. Bank accounts, property titles, vehicles locked, untouchable. My ex-wife and her brother wouldn't see it coming until the sheriff knocked on their door. Driving home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not grief, power. The silence I carried had finally spoken, and it spoke louder than any scream. For the first time since they erased my name, I knew this fight was mine to win. It didn't take long. 3 weeks after I filed the motion in Denver, the first knock came. Not a friendly knock. A sheriff's knock, firm, final, echoing through the same doorway where I once carried groceries, where I once kissed my daughter goodnight. Inside, panic erupted. My ex-wife's voice cracked as she shouted, "There must be a mistake." My brother-in-law's bluster melted into stammering excuses. Their hands shook as deputies handed them the order assets. Frozen accounts, locked vehicles, seized pending trial. I stood across the street, hidden in the shadow of a street lamp. Snow fell in silence as blue and red lights flickered across the house I once called home. The SUV was the first to go. A tow truck hauled it away, while my brother-in-law cursed at the night sky. His trophy bought with my sweat vanished into the dark. Then came the bankers. Frozen cards denied payments. Phones buzzing with overdue alerts. I could almost hear their world collapsing one transaction at a time. Through the frosted glass, I saw my daughter. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't crying. She was just standing still, eyes wide, watching her mother and uncle unravel. For the first time, I wondered if she understood the truth that every brick, every beam, every comfort had been mine to give. I didn't smile. I didn't cheer. I simply watched. And as their laughter turned to pleading, as their comfort turned to fear, I felt it justice, cold, precise, undeniable. When the deputies drove away and the flashing lights disappeared, the street grew quiet again. Snow kept falling on Denver, blanketing everything in white. But the house wasn't quiet anymore. Inside, voices cracked and rose anger, fear, desperation. I could hear them from the sidewalk, pleading over phones, demanding answers from banks that had none to give. That's when I stepped forward. For the first time in years, I walked up those front steps. The same steps I had poured myself one bag of cement at a time. My boots echoed against them like a verdict. I didn't knock. I opened the door. They froze. My ex-wife's face went pale. My brother-in-law's fist clenched, but his eyes betrayed him full of panic. Not power. My daughter stood in the corner watching everything in silence. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I set the judge's order on the dining table, the table I built, the one they feasted on while I starved. The paper slid across the wood like a blade. This I said, my voice steady as mine. All of it. Always was. No one moved. No one argued. Because the truth was undeniable. My ex-wife tried to speak, but the words caught in her throat. My brother-in-law looked at the floor, and my daughter, her eyes met mine. For the first time, I didn't see pity. I saw recognition. I turned, leaving the paper behind. I didn't slam the door. I didn't have to. The silence I left was louder than any scream. They thought the sheriff's visit was the end, but they hadn't seen the sharpest blade yet. Weeks earlier, before the order was filed, I had made one final stop in Denver, my lawyer's office. I carried a second binder. Not bills, not mortgage records, something heavier. For years, every time I gave them money, whether for tuition for medical bills or for that shiny SUV, I wrote it down. I drafted simple contracts, signed and dated. At the time, they laughed at me, called me paranoid, said, "Who writes loan papers for family?" I did, because deep down I knew one day I'd need proof. Those contracts weren't casual notes. They were legally binding loan agreements. My signature, their signatures, witnesses when possible, dates, amounts, repayment terms, all neat, precise, unshakable. So when the judge reviewed the case, he didn't just see a man fighting for recognition. He saw a creditor demanding repayment. And under the law, every gift became debt. Every act of generosity became leverage. The remodel debt, the furnace debt, the SUV debt, all of it stacked against them like a tower ready to fall. When the truth landed, they looked at me not as a fool to be erased, but as the one man who had been planning all along. I wasn't the victim. I was the architect. And they were standing inside the walls. I had built walls now closing in. They used to laugh at me. Every family dinner in Denver, someone would roll their eyes when I pulled out a folder. My ex-wife would smirk and say, "Michael saves receipts for everything, even a light bulb." My brother-in-law would call me cheap, a hoarder of paper instead of money. I never argued. I just kept filing, because I knew one truth: they didn't paper doesn't lie. Now those same stacks of receipts, contracts, and statements weren't jokes anymore. They were weapons. When my lawyer dropped them on the courtroom table, the sound echoed like a hammer striking steel. Page after page, year after year, proof upon proof. The judge flipped through the files, his eyes narrowing. My ex-wife's attorney tried to object, but the weight of ink and dates silenced him. Every laugh they once had, every insult they once threw, now boomerang back with deadly force. The very habit they mocked, the one trait that made me an outcast, was the reason their empire was crumbling. I saw it in their faces. My ex-wife's smirk collapsed into disbelief. My brother-in-law's arrogance melted into fear. And my daughter, she stared at the files, realization dawning that her father hadn't been obsessive. He had been preparing. All those years they called me petty, stubborn, cheap. But in the end, it wasn't pettiness. It was foresight. And foresight sharpened by betrayal is the sharpest blade of all. The court rulings came down like iron. The house was mine again. The cars, the accounts, the property, they all bore my name once more. On paper, I had won. But victory doesn't always taste sweet. That night, I sat alone in a small diner off Colfax Avenue in Denver. The booths were half empty, the coffee lukewarm, the jukebox humming some forgotten tune. Outside, snow kept falling soft and endless. I stirred the cup in front of me, watching the steam curl and fade. Around me, strangers laughed, ate their meals, lived their lives. No one knew who I was. No one knew what I had done. I thought about the house, the walls I built, the roof I repaired, the furnace I sacrificed for. It was mine again. Yet in my chest there was no warmth, just silence. I thought about my daughter, how her eyes had met mine that night. Did she understand? Did she hate me? Or worse, did she see me as they did, not a man, not a father, but a weapon of silence and debt? Revenge gave me back everything they tried to steal, but it couldn't give me back the years. It couldn't give me back the man I once was. And sitting there in that quiet diner with snow pressing against the glass, I realized the cruelest truth of all: justice is cold. And when it finally comes, it doesn't heal. It only stops the bleeding. I left that diner in Denver just before midnight. The snow was heavier now, burying the streets, erasing footsteps as if no one had ever walked there. And maybe that was fitting, because betrayal erases you too. Family betrayal cuts the deepest. Strangers can cheat you, enemies can hate you. But when it's your own blood, it rewrites the very story of who you thought you were. I got my name back. I got the house back. I got every brick, every dollar, every scrap of dignity they tried to steal. But I'll never get back the nights I worked 2 jobs. I'll never get back the years they laughed at me. I'll never get back the man who believed love was enough. So I'll leave you with this. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you trusted most? Have you ever poured everything into someone only to have them erase you like you were nothing? If you have, then you know this story isn't just mine, it's ours. And maybe sharing it is the only way we stop it from spreading further. So tell me your story. Write it below. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if you believe these stories matter, if you believe the truth deserves a voice, then stay with me. Subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories to tell. Stories they don't want told. This isn't just revenge. It's justice. Cold, relentless, and real.